For Global Business Update, Michael Wilson joins us now from London. Good morning, Michael.
Morning. As far as Asia Pacific's concerned, a lot of investors are digesting what the Bank of Japan said. I'll come on to that in a second. They're also looking ahead to the US midterm elections. We can no doubt talk about that if you want to later on. I suspect, though, that unless there is a massive majority as far as Republicans are concerned, or a massive majority as far as Democrats are concerned, most traders are really looking towards the US inflation figures, which come out on Thursday. The Nikkei rose about 1.43%. The S&P up slightly, about 1/3% in Australia. The Bank of Japan, they were waiting for these kind of details. They don't actually say a great deal, to be honest. A summary of opinions of board members from its monetary policy in October, when it left interest rates unchanged. Whilst other, as you know, banks around the world have been having jumbo rate rises, but nothing has so far happened in Japan. I can't see much of information there, to be honest. But there we are. The Hang Seng in Hong Kong, fractionally lower. Shanghai's composite fell about 0.5%. Goldman Sachs, for what it's worth, says that China is still months away, as it puts it, from reopening. The actual reopening is a lot to do with the fact that some of the older citizens have not been vaccinated. But when it does, it suspects, Goldman Sachs is saying that the equity markets will be up by about 20% when it finally opens. Just staying with China, and Alibaba is extending through its international arm, expanding into South Korea. It's spending 10 billion won, that's $7 million this year in South Korea, to lower product prices. And it's after the US business there, basically, or US based business. It's trying to replicate it and replace it. As far as the US is concerned, well, basically stock futures fairly flat ahead of those midterms. Again, I have to say that I really think the markets are not that particularly concerned unless there's a big majority either way. And as I said right at the beginning of all this, they're much more concentrated on the inflation figures. Isn't it interesting how the US has suddenly emerged? You see it sort of fracturing at home, but its overseas influence is massive. Not least of which the almighty dollar, which could of course get stronger if the Fed decides to clamp even further down on inflation by raising interest rates there. The EU has said it has serious concerns about Joe Biden's Inflation Reduction Act. I have to say, again, I'm not sure how he planned that this would somehow reduce inflation if you're spending more on infrastructure. Normal economics says you're doing that, therefore you get inflation. It was going to put trillions in, if you remember. It had a very, very hard time getting through, and it still putting $369 billion onto climate and energy policies. And this includes tax credits for companies. European officials have acknowledged the green ambitions, but they're also saying it's unfair because of what looks like state subsidies for electric manufacture, which of course will cut across what the EU wants to do. Here, back in the UK, still basically waiting for this autumn budget on November the 17th, and it looks as though some of that big hole will be filled through stealth taxes. Now, I don't know whether you are familiar with the term fiscal drag. You probably are, but just to tell you about it, it often happens when you don't raise tax thresholds, and inflation being quite high in the United Kingdom, and therefore if you don't do that, then people end up paying more tax. It doesn't look like they're paying more tax. That's why they call them stealth taxes. But that's what it looks like. He's planning to fund the budget when it actually happens when it's announced on November the 17th. And there's some breaking news this morning. News of a gas deal. Apparently, as you know, the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak actually did go to COP. It is at COP27, changed his mind about going, and apparently has done a deal with the United States again about LNG. And isn't it interesting how the United States is once again coming forward to fill energy problems in the rest of the world? So there may not be the security blanket there, but everything abroad is going in their favour. Oil, I would say, again, it's very, very difficult to tell at the moment, but I'm looking at the markets and I'm thinking that $100 a barrel is sort of on the near horizon. Both Brent and WTI treading water right now, but they are not far from triple figures, and the midterm elections, I think, will be about a lot about pump prices, and Biden is not getting any help from there. And again, a bit more breaking news this morning: a backlog of 77 ships now waiting to transport agricultural goods from Ukraine and bring wheat to market and so on. Thus, prices will remaining high. There's something called the Joint Coordination Centre, which is engendering the Black Sea Grain Initiative. That's part of that deal we talked about in July being brokered amongst Ukraine, Russia, Turkey, and the UN. Russia's sort of flip-flopped about whether or not it's going to allow these ships through. But since the deal, 10 million metric tons of grain and foodstuffs have left for destinations around the world. So it has worked in the past. But again, we have this backlog this morning. That's the global view.
Quickly, I keep asking, what's really this black hole number? From 50 billion, hang on a minute, Michael, from 50 billion, Jeremy Hunt is now talking about a buffer for 54 billion. And that's why I keep asking. Now, they are looking to inheritance taxes.
Yeah.
Also, they're trying to put the threshold up for, windfall taxes. The energy companies are protesting that this will stifle creativity. What's your take on that? And secondly, is midterms day to day amidst high inflation in America? A lot of people look and say that it's all done for the Democratic Party, but we have to wait for the results. Do you think that inflation has really dealt them a big blow, despite all the things they tried to do with the Fed?
Yeah, I do. Absolutely, I do. I think they will struggle on the doorsteps. But again, let's see how it turns out. Again, not particularly market sensitive unless there's a big shift one way or the other. I still think that, as you quite rightly say, the main concern is inflation, and that pushes me to think that the markets are really looking forward to Thursday's CPI figures in the United States. So I don't think, and I also feel as well that the pump prices will have an enormous effect on the Democrats' fortunes, because Biden's visit to Saudi Arabia yielded absolutely nothing, as you know. You talk about that black hole figure. Again, I've seen another one this morning. I'm looking now at 54 billion pounds. Nobody's really got a handle on this. If you want to break it down slightly, 33 billion in public spending and raise 21 billion in tax, and as you quite rightly say, extending the freeze on the nil rate band as far as inheritance tax is concerned towards 2027, 2028. So that's a few years away. But generally, it all fits in with this kind of idea of funding through fiscal drag. I think that's what we're going. That appears to be the sort of, I hate this phrase, this mood music, this message coming from the government as they apparently need to prepare the media for what they're going to say on November the 17th. Why they just don't do it on November the 17th, I've got no idea. I suspect that whilst this is all written down, and it was supposed to go to the OBI yesterday, and it may well have done that, as far as I know, I think there are a number of kites being flown here. I mean, this is what normally happens, isn't it? Politicians sort of come up with some ideas and then fly them, see what the reaction is, and if it meets with overall opprobrium, then they shelve them. It could be happening here, but I think that the CPI figures. The other important thing I certainly feel as though is the United States and the UK energy deal. deal. They're calling it. They've even got a name for it now. They're calling it a energy security partnership, and apparently the talks are in final stages. Of course, LNG will be expensive. They may well be supplying other countries in the EU, but at the moment, the news this morning is that a deal is being brokered.
Okay, well, Michael, on this energy deal, well, I think in a sense you may have been vindicated, because the last time we were discussing the possibility of blackouts in the UK during winter, you have said, well, it may not happen. And in fact, if this energy deal goes through, then of course we may not have those blackouts. And it's not just the US that the UK is trying to cut a deal with. They're also looking at Norway and Qatar, and they're likely to get bigger volumes of liquefied natural gas from Norway and Qatar. So maybe it may not be a dark winter after all, as you suggested earlier on. Now, Rishi Sunak and Hunt, they are hunting for more money from the wealthy, out of the belief that the wealthiest people should pay more so that the poorer members of society can survive. But I wanted you to comment on the pensions triple lock. It looks like it's back on the cards. Previously, there were doubts about whether Sunak and Hunt will remove the pensions triple lock. Now, this decision to put it back in the budget, do you think is political, or it is an economic, hard-headed economic decision? And then finally, what's happening in the tech world? During COVID, we used to say that, the tech giants were the ones benefiting most, but now it looks like there is a problem. Twitter has sent away about half of its workforce. Tomorrow, Facebook, Meta, is going to announce massive cuts and job losses. In Silicon Valley, people have also lost their jobs. Is this all about digital ads going down, or about the business models, or the fact of the global recession?
I think you're right. I think the latter point you made is the big one. I think the business model of these big tech companies is being challenged now. The advertising the advertising revenue that they thought they would get is simply not happening. I think and also I saw a figure yesterday. I can't immediately call it to mind. Forgive me, but we didn't manage to talk yesterday for all sorts of reasons, and I did have it in front of me, and it's gone, I think, at the moment. But the fact of it is that the young are actually turning away from things like social media, particularly Twitter and Facebook as well, to other things like TikTok, for example, and Instagram. And I think that so the actual the customer base, if you like, I think is narrowing. But I do feel as though, as you quite rightly said, I think it's all about the business model actually changing, and they're searching for it, which way it's going to go. And I think the same will happen with Twitter as well. I feel as though this was $8 for a blue tick, and all, as they work towards their verification process, whatever that may be. I feel as though that people are being, what is Elon Musk doing? I mean, he laid off, many people, didn't he? And now he's asking some of the engineers to come back. I really don't think, again, who am I to say that? The shareholders are worrying that actually he doesn't really have his eye on the businesses. And as somebody was putting it this morning, is winging it, actually, as far as that's concerned. So that's the tech giants. As far as the triple lock's concerned, I think it's probably quite expensive. It's always been, it was part of their manifesto, and I therefore think it's a political decision. It is expensive, and I feel as though to get rid of it would actually not disenfranchise so much, but lose votes, I suppose, really, for the Tories, for what they would imagine, the Conservatives rather, what they would imagine to be one of their core voters, people like me, my kind of age, the oldies, quite like the fact that their pension is being upgraded with inflation, but it is a very, very expensive thing to do. So yes, they are still casting around. Your first point about the rich helping the poor, I think this budget will be sold on the broader shoulders, as they put it, of people who are relatively rich helping the poor. And I feel as though What he will stand up and say on November the 17th, I don't know. But if I were him, I'd be standing up saying, look, you've heard all this stuff. I wouldn't say in so many words, but you've heard all this stuff. Actually, what we're going to do will appear quite painless. And it will. Stealth taxes appear. They aren't, but they will appear. They will appear painless. And yes, you're absolutely right. The rich will help the poor.
Well, thank you very much, Michael.